You know, I don't get to talk about it too much, but one of my favorite things to discuss on this channel is Kirby. Whenever we get to talk about Kirby and speculate about the future of Kirby, it is a good day, and that is what we're doing today, as well as a bit of Fire Emblem as we'll get to, but mostly pertaining to this new rumor about Kirby Planet Robobots coming to the Nintendo Switch in 2025. Now, I've been talking for months about how weird it is that there hasn't been a Kirby game in quite some time. I know for a lot of people that maybe aren't into Kirby as much, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, right? We just had Return to Dreamland Deluxe, what, a year and a half ago? It was actually closer to 2 years ago now, but for Kirby, that is a very long time. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the closure of Vanpool, who was heavily supporting some of the smaller Kirby titles there for a very long time. However, it's still going almost 2 full years without even seeing a new Kirby release, even if it is a remaster or something, is definitely out of the ordinary. So for a while now, I've been talking like, well, maybe the new Kirby game is ready for next year. Be that 3D, be that 2D, or maybe we'll have a smaller game like a Dream Buffet style thing, or maybe we will have a remaster of one of 3 games, basically, or maybe even really one of 4, between Kirby Air Ride, Kirby's Epic Yarn, Triple Deluxe, and what I have been saying is the most likely is Kirby Planet Robobot. We have a new rumor from Nate the Hates, kind of just saying like, hey, Kirby Planet Robobot is releasing in 2025 on the Nintendo Switch. And if you're not familiar with Nate the Hate, he said this on the latest episode of his podcast. I'll have it linked down below. But yeah, he's saying that Kirby Planet Robobot is coming next year. We've heard similar things over the past couple of months. This was back in May. Brazil, who was a journalist for a Portuguese Nintendo website, he had said that there would be a GameCube game as well as a 3DS game getting remastered next physical year for Nintendo. So after March 2025, somewhere in that range, right? When this happened, I'm sure I talked about it. As it is noteworthy, Brazil has been pretty accurate, especially when it comes to like direct timings. He was the one saying like, yeah, they were moving up their typical September plans for an August showing, and that is what ended up happening with the partner showcase as well as the indie world. So when this happened, you know, I was like, okay, this is kind of like a nothing rumor because Nintendo has been doing so many 3DS remasters and so many GameCube remasters that while I do trust this person, at least on some level, it was a little funny to see it because it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about the final years of Switch. We will keep getting more and more remasters as they pad out the lineup. So it wasn't really a rumor that like I took that much like thought into because it's like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, no, go figure, right? We're gonna get more remasters. But between him saying that in May and then now we have this this rumor about Kirby Planet Robobot, I think these two things are probably linked, right? That remaster really was probably Kirby Planet Robobot, which is something we have talked about. You know, I know a lot of people were really hoping for Kid Icarus Uprising. Some other people were hoping for like Animal Crossing New Leaf. But I think ultimately, when you look at how long it's been since we got a Kirby game and this rumor of another 3DS game coming over, that one just kind of made the most sense, especially since it is a pretty critically acclaimed game. Now, as we'll get to, it looks like they might be pulling a Mario and Luigi on us and skipping one of the entries because we had Return to Dreamland. We're probably getting Planet Robobot. It looks like they might be pulling a Partners in Time on us and skipping that middle entry being a Triple Deluxe, which I have some thoughts on. But there was something else that we will talk about in today's video as well from Samus Hunter, who I've been talking about quite a bit more recently, who I think is giving us a much better idea of the entire 2025 picture for the current Nintendo Switch, or at the very least, the picture for the first half of the year. So if you missed my videos on it, I've covered this in the past. Samus Hunter tweeted out on November 25th, I'm looking forward to replaying the entire trilogy of Metroid Prime games on the Switch before this art book released, basically saying that Prime 2 and 3 are planned for release in early 2025, likely between Donkey Kong and Xenoblade X, so in between January and March, meaning February, you would assume, right? Maybe it's early March, maybe it's late January, but probably in that February timeframe, we will be seeing Metroid Prime 2 and 3. Now, after Nate the Hate did this podcast episode, Samus Hunter tweeted out once more saying, Nate the Hate and his podcast confirmed Planet Robobot coming to Switch in the first half of 2025. Well, I can confirm that, yes, I heard about a 3DS Kirby remake game too. The other game I heard is a Fire Emblem remake. So, once again, you could maybe see this as one insider kind of riding off the coattails of another insider, and maybe it's just, you know, that does definitely happen, but maybe they did both independently hear about it separately. And I think the interesting thing here, of course, is Fire Emblem Remake. We'll talk about that more after Kirby. They also said here, so now you know what to expect before the new console launch. What games do you expect for the Switch successor first year? Now, I'll have another video on this, I think, tomorrow. Nate the Hate had a lot to say about Switch 2 and how apparently he's hearing that is releasing in June. So I'll do a video talking about all that tomorrow. But for now, I wanted to really focus on Kirby Planet Robobot as well as the Fire Emblem Remake. If this is all to be believed, it looks like we basically have a pretty good picture of the early 2025 landscape for Nintendo fans, and it's looking like a lot of remakes, like more than we've ever seen before, and a more consistent cadence than we've ever seen before at any point in the Switch's life cycle. Even like earlier this year when we had so many back-to-back, it was broken up by Princess Peach Showtime and Endless Ocean. We had new games mixed in there. If this is all true, this is my prediction. I think we're looking at Donkey Kong in January, Metroid Prime 2 and 3 in February, and in March we're getting Xenoblade X, which is a huge game, but it is an old game. April, maybe, that's when you see Kirby Planet Robobot split in. If this game is announced in, let's say, a February Direct or something, maybe it's announced on Twitter one day in January. That could be a great April game. Kirby games usually do release in the spring, so that does make sense. And then maybe you see the Fire Emblem remake release in like May or June. That's your first half of the year lineup. And then in the second half of the year, you get Pokemon Legends EA as well as Metroid Prime 4, which, yes, they maybe switch to cross-gen games or something along those lines. I'm not fully convinced on that, but maybe that's the case. And then that's kind of it for Switch next year. You get, 6 remasters in the first half of the year, and then 2 new, very big games in the second half. I would imagine 1 or 2 remasters thrown in the second half as well. But, if we're talking about a June release for the Switch 2, they are going to start slowing down for sure as we get into that latter half for the current Switch, because they're going to want you to be focusing on the Switch 2, right? You're going to have the new 3D Mario and maybe like a Mario Kart or Animal Crossing or some other major games releasing with that new hardware. So, yeah, let's circle back, though. First of all, I will say, if that is the first half of the year, if we are getting the Switch 2 in June, which I'll talk about more in tomorrow's video, that's a pretty good lineup, in my opinion. I know it's all old games, but, it's all games I'm excited to replay. Donkey Kong Country Returns, it's been a long, long time since I played that. Metroid Prime 2 and 3 I've actually never played, so I need to get caught up on those anyway. If they don't get remastered, if this is all bogus, I will play those on Wii if I must. Xenoblade X is the only Xenoblade game I have never really put too much substantial time into, maybe 5-10 hours a long time ago. Planet Robobot I just played a couple years ago, but I'd be totally down to replay that, looking all pretty on the Switch. And then whatever this Fire Emblem remake is, once again, it's probably a game I haven't played unless it's Awakening or Fates, which I highly doubt. So to me, that'd be a pretty good lineup, even if it is mostly old games, just biding their time for when the Switch 2 releases. But let's go back to just talking about Kirby for a bit here, because Kirby Planet Robobot is a very special game. I think it's one of the best Kirby games. In fact, I think it is probably my favorite 2D Kirby game. Return to Dreamland Deluxe is fantastic, don't get me wrong. I think that is a really great game. I also love Kirby's Epic Yarn, but Planet Robobot is just a really, really special game with really great puzzle mechanics, and the level design is really great. The mechs that Kirby get into, it's just a really unique Kirby game, ultimately. We have so many, I would say, and not like a negative way necessarily, but we have so many sterile 2D Kirby games ever since the modern era, starting with Return to Dreamland. Planet Robobot really kind of stands as its own unique thing, even if it does have the same kind of visual identity there. But I think for a lot of fans, Planet Robobot is almost certainly the fan favorite Kirby game, at least of the modern era, not counting Forgotten Land, of course. So it makes sense for them to bring it back. However, I do have a lot of concerns regarding this, because I'll actually have a video, I think on Tuesday, talking about the lackluster nature of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD in terms of how the graphics are shaping up for that game and how visually it just kind of feels like a disappointment. I'm worried that could happen with Planet Robobot. So I'm going to have footage all throughout this video. You've been seeing it. It's from a user, Aweebo, on YouTube, who did a 4K 60 FPS playthrough of Planet Robobot on an emulator. The game already looks pretty good. Honestly, I worry that they might just do this. I worry that we might get a really bare bones version of Planet Robobot on the Switch, which would be great to have it on Switch, but with the closure of Vanpool, with how I would assume all hands on deck for the next 3D Kirby game, or at the very least the next new Kirby game, I worry they might kind of go the quick and dirty route when it comes to Planet Robobots, and maybe it won't have that whole new Magalore epilogue adjacent thing. Maybe we won't get an expansion starring Susie in this game. Maybe it'll just be it's just Planet Robobot HD, and it's not deluxe. It's just HD, man. It's just on the Switch in HD. I worry we might get one of those type supports given the closure of Vanpool. They have less resources now. If it is HAL, that's the ideal. That's totally the best case scenario. So they'll do it up as much as they can and add new modes and stuff. But I worry that maybe it could be someone else, maybe even Forever Entertainment or Tantalus. Granted, those two, Tantalus just released Luigi's Mansion 2 and Forever Entertainment. The thing with Forever Entertainment is they were contracted by Nintendo to supposedly do multiple remasters. I'm not sure if they have enough bandwidth to really do multiple at the same time and release them in quick succession. Maybe Returns HD was their main project for the past couple of years, and then they do another one. But I just worry that Planet Robobot might not get the same deluxe treatments that Return to Dreamland had, which Return to Dreamland was already a really great game on Wii. Deluxe made it like possibly my favorite 2D Kirby game, right up there with Robobot and right up there with Epic Yarn. So I do have some hesitancy when it comes to this in terms of being optimistic, in terms of like, oh, will there be like a Suzy expansion? I hope so, right? Like, I hope we get that whole new mode that really makes it a worthwhile addition. I hope we get co-op added, at least in some variety, right? Maybe not in the main campaign, because this was a single-player Kirby game. Maybe you don't go that far and add co-op to that, because that would certainly break some of like the puzzle design, I suppose. But at the very least, I feel like there should be a Magolor epilogue styled thing for this game with some sort of co-op mode. Every Kirby game on Switch is multiplayer. If this game comes out and it's single player only, I think that'd be disappointing for a lot of people, myself included. We need something in there that is multiplayer. There is a Team Kirby Clash, and I believe it's Kirby 3D Blowout Blast or Kirby 3D Rumble. And Team Kirby Clash already on Switch as the free-to-play game Super Kirby Clash, so it'd be a little redundant to include that. And then Kirby 3D Rumble, yeah, they could totally include that. That'd be cool. But you kind of have to remove Team Kirby Clash. It'd be weird for that to just be in there. So what do you replace that with? Do you do another Merry Magoland kind of styled like minigame collection? I'm not sure what the right path is here. Ideally, it is a Return to Dreamland style thing where you have the main campaign. Maybe they add some sort of like shoehorned in co-op to that. But then also you get maybe like a prologue starring Suzy leading up to the events of Planet Robobot. I think that's our best case scenario. And then maybe you get some other like smaller modes to replace Team Kirby Clash and Kirby 3D Rumble. I guess you could leave in there. Maybe you include all the levels from Kirby's Blowout Blast, the eShop version there. I also wonder about the visual quality here. Like I said, maybe it's Forever Entertainment. Maybe it's one of these, studios that haven't produced the most high quality remakes so far on the Switch or remasters. But like I said, this game already looks good. But also, so did Return to Dreamland. And Return to Dreamland, they remade that game. They completely redid the art style. I don't know. Do you put Planet Robobot in that same like cell shaded, thick outline style as Return to Dreamland? I don't know if you do that to Planet Robobot. It would look good, obviously. I think Return to Dreamland Deluxe looks fantastic. I just wonder if you do that for every Kirby remake moving forward. And, one other thing I want to talk about regarding Kirby before we move on to Fire Emblem, man, Triple Deluxe got done dirty. I was just talking in a video on my other channel at It's Amiibo, talking about Nintendo in 2014, and as a part of that, I of course talked about Kirby Triple Deluxe. I think Kirby Triple Deluxe is actually very underrated. I think that is a great Kirby game. Is it as great as Planet Robobot? No, but I don't think the golf and quality is there like a lot of people seem to suggest. I think it is a pretty close in quality 2D Kirby game, and for them to just skip it, that does hurt a little bit, because they'll probably never go back, right? I mean, maybe they would, but it does feel like a Mario and Luigi situation where, we got the Superstar Saga remake, they skipped Partners in Time, and then they went straight to Bowser's Inside Story because it was such a more popular game. Planet Robobot is a much more popular game than Triple Deluxe. So we're probably never getting Triple Deluxe. I guess the ideal situation, right, the dream scenario here is that we get both of them in some sort of combo pack, but that's just not really how Nintendo seems to do things these days. I mean, we're talking about maybe Prime 2 and 3 being in a combo pack, and even that almost feels optimistic at this point. Same thing with like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. We did get Pikmin 1 and 2, but those were pretty bare bones GameCube ports. I guess if they're bare bones ports, maybe you do get Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, and maybe they don't really change anything. Maybe they don't add any new content. But yeah, I mean, either way, no matter what state this game releases in, Kirby Planet Robobot, if you have not played it, is a fantastic 2D Kirby game. I'll be happy for more people getting to play it. And the timing really does line up for there to be some sort of Kirby release. I think the next 3D Kirby game or the next new 2D Kirby game, probably 3D after the success of Forgotten Land. I think we probably see that in 2026, right? Like that's probably pretty far along in development for Switch 2. But I was kind of expecting something else akin to like a Kirby Dream Buffet on Switch, like a new thing, or maybe even something more left field like Kirby's Air Ride or even Epic Yarn, which we saw that on 3DS. But I feel like that game is also just so popular that it kind of warrants a third version like we saw with Donkey Kong Country Returns, or like we're seeing with that game. So maybe Kirby's Epic Yarn is something that happens later down the line, 5-10 years from now, and we get another remake of that. Off topic, but I do totally think that Yoshi's Woolly World will see a Switch release. Honestly, maybe even next year. Maybe that's one of those like later 2025 games for the current Nintendo Switch audience. But yeah, very excited at the prospect of Kirby Planet Robobot coming back as a Nintendo Switch title. I just hope they do it justice, give it the facial uplift that it deserves, even though it does look very good already, just upscaled in an emulator. You know, touch it up more, make those models look a little bit sharper, that kind of thing, and maybe redo some of the backgrounds. Those look a little bit more basic compared to the Switch Kirby games, and you know, really just add some more nice, meaty, hopefully co-op content is what I really want to see from this Switch version of the game. However, that's not all we're talking about today. We do have to talk about Fire Emblem, as there have been rumors for a long time about a Fire Emblem remake. Specifically, I believe it was Emily Rogers who had said that there was a Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War remake in development. Emily Rogers is someone I don't get to talk about too often here because she's been MIA for a long time, but if you were following like the NX rumor mill, even like back in the Wii U, Emily Rogers was like the one you trust. Emily Rogers did not miss. She had one major miss, being Mother 3, but even that, I honestly kind of believe that that was planned at some point and then they canceled it for Wii U Virtual Console, but she's been right about a lot of things, and one of the last major things she left us with before she left the rumor mill is that Intelligent Systems was developing a Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War remake, and I'm not sure if this was specifically from her, but the rumor was that it was basically done. Like, this rumor was done. I think that might have stemmed a lot from the codenames, so the Fire Emblem games all have codenames starting with Iron, and then they're just numbered, so I believe it was Three Houses is Iron 17, and Engage is Iron 19, and we don't know what Iron 18 is. Now, I think at this point, it's been so long that we've been talking about a Fire Emblem remake, you can maybe question, like, did something happen here? Did this game actually get canceled? I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but also, we know Nintendo has a tendency to sit on games, and if you are thinking this, just to kind of dispel it really quickly here, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes had a completely different code name, not using the Iron kind of terminology there. So it's not Fire Emblem Warriors. So we're missing a mainline Fire Emblem game, a numbered mainline Fire Emblem game, and it's just been MIA for a long time now. That supposedly must have entered development before Fire Emblem Engage, and we just haven't seen it. So Emily Rogers, very reliable. I do trust her. I just wonder where this game is, man. And the reason I specifically brought up the rumor from Brazil about a GameCube game and a 3DS game, well, here's our 3DS game, Planet Robobot. What if instead of getting Genealogy of the Holy War, we get Path of Radiance? But what if that's our GameCube game? It would be an easier thing for them to do. Genealogy is an SNES game, and that they have to completely remake it. Whereas with Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, you can just touch those up, we're getting GameCube games that are just basic touch-ups from the GameCube, and they're putting them on Switch for, $30, like Pikmin 1 and 2. They could totally do that for Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Maybe those get a dual pack. Also, Ike is one of the most popular characters in the series. I don't know, man. I'd lean towards Genealogy still being the one, right? Like, I do still think that'll be it. Especially, I guess if you think about it this way, the GameCube game Brazil could be referring to as Metroid Prime 2, right? Like, that's the issue with that rumor. It's so broad that, like, yeah, you're going to be right no matter what. Not to, like, discredit it completely, but, like, man, there's a 3DS and GameCube game, I feel like, every year. Certainly this year anyway. But yeah, I do think it's time to see the next Fire Emblem remake, especially because if this is something they've been sitting on, you want to get it out now, so that way 2 years into the Switch, when they announce the next mainline Fire Emblem game, maybe it's developed by Koei Tecmo in partnership with Intelligent Systems again, maybe it's just Intelligent Systems with no Koei Tecmo involvement, you want to like have some time in between those things. You want to get this Fire Emblem remake out now, so that way there's a bit of a waiting period and people have time to get hyped up again for the next mainline game. So a 2025 first half release for Fire Emblem 4 Remake, or whatever this remake ends up being, I think is the best bet. And then you're probably looking at maybe early 2027 as the next mainline Fire Emblem game, which is 4 years after Engage. So that sounds about right. Yeah, I think that's totally possible. And then maybe you repeat this process where in 2029 we get another Fire Emblem Remake, 2031 another new Fire Emblem game. I think that would work out pretty well. So that is going to do it for today's video. A lot to talk about, a lot to dissect. Definitely wanted to focus on Kirby though, because I'm very excited at the idea of Planet Robobot coming back. I just worry that they might they might not do it the full justice that they did in Return to Dreamland, and that stresses me out. But my fears are probably unwarranted given how great Return to Dreamland was, but also given how Donkey Kong and Luigi's Mansion 2 are, I'm just a little worried about it. And also, of course, Fire Emblem. I'm always excited for Fire Emblem. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on these two potential remasters coming in 2025. Will you be picking either of them up? And also, like I said, I will have a video tomorrow on all the other Switch 2 stuff that Nate the Hate said in that podcast, because there's a lot to talk about there, mostly pertaining to a June release for the console and a May event, kind of a blowout event. So we'll talk about all that tomorrow. Of course, subscribe here for that. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. Check out my Nintendo collecting channel at It's Amiibo. And until next time, folks, peace.